my god, out of every single bad Sonic game out there, there were so many to pick from, so sticking with my one game per franchise rule was not easy here. But I had to go with Shadow the Hedgehog. I nearly went with Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric and nearly went with Sonic 06, but to be honest, Rise of Lyric just depressed me more than anything for how little anyone cared with the making of it, and Sonic 06 for all the bugs and numerous awful moments. But hey, at least with Sonic 06 there's salvageable aspects like the soundtrack and some of the levels being slightly fun for 3D Sonic. Yes, I said that. But Shadow? I cannot think of one redeemable thing about the entire game other than the intro cutscene and the song. It's the most memorable part of the game by far, and it's mostly a shame how it sets the tone pretty well, only to completely trash it from the second you hit the start button. Put it this way, even with something like Sonic Free Riders or Sonic 06, if they weren't as broken as they were when they released, they wouldn't be that bad. They're mostly awful because half the time they don't work. Shadow, though, does work, so the fact that it actually plays properly yet is absolutely goddamn terrible just as a working video game speaks a lot about the quality of it in my personal opinion. And I'm sure there'll be many Sonic the Hedgehog superfans in the comments that will rise their swords to the game's aid and will call me out for being a Sonic hater and blah 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 blah, but no, you're wrong. Here's the thing. This game released in 2005. I was 11 years old at the time, and I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I thought back then this was the coolest and most badass thing I'd ever seen as a kid. I went into this game as an impressionable child that didn't know any better, loved Sonic heroes to bits, and at the time expected Shadow with a submachine gun to be great, yet I still hated it, so there was no bias going into it. I didn't like it then when I wasn't a reviewer and couldn't explain why, and really don't like it now since being able to explain it, and I'm going to take joy in doing so right now. Let's begin with the first thing that happens when you start playing, the controls. Shadow throughout the whole game plays like a marble rolling on an ice rink with unplayable acceleration and slippiness that makes even basic platforming absolutely horrid. Again, going to another game that I could have picked, Sonic Boom at least controls decently. You know, aside from that thing. The gunplay functions, but with it being mostly auto-lock and only useful when at a total standstill, it just feels like a pointless addition and one that can screw up the particular mission you go through where you have to shoot very specific enemies to please the relevant character you're doing a mission for, leaving it up to the game where bullets will end up. And even if that's not the case and you try to be careful, the pace of the game is halted dramatically from your finicky specific aiming and stop-start style in the first place. And those missions, whoa, you can either run to the gold ring to ignore everybody, shoot good guys, shoot bad guys, collect an absurd amount of stuff throughout the level, and basically do any other level of meaningless task that means instead of doing what Sonic games do best, running and jumping, you just inch your way through each stage with the awfully sensitive controls and still somehow manage to miss things, meaning needing to reach the very end of the stage in order to fly back to the start to comb back through the boring and bland, grey, gloomy stage all over again, but with no indication on where anything remains. But I can hear you asking, why don't you just do those missions that mean you just run through the stage and do what every Sonic game does best? But in the end, that doesn't matter anyway, because even though there are different story pathways to take as a good hedgy, ignorant hedgy, and edgy hedgy, there's ultimately a final story segment that is actually where the story is supposed to go, but that means you have to do most of these missions and replay the same stages multiple times for all the different pathways, so the game can't even leave you feeling satisfied with the single alliance path you decide to take. And not just because the gameplay within the stage is so monotonous and dull, but because the cutscenes, voice acting, and unique endings to get are some of the worst directed, performed, and nonsensical in the entire Sonic universe. It's a cartoon hedgehog packing heat, what more do I need to say? The fact the game doesn't even have fun with itself despite that concept is enough for me to tell you to never check this one out. But hey, I know the game has its fans, so if you like it, that's fantastic, I'm happy for you. But for me, no, I've only finished it twice, once as a kid and once as an adult, and I will never do so ever again. Until a potential Caddicarus video, you never know. And maybe the GameCube version was better than the PS2 version that I grew up with, I have no idea. And come on, at least Sonic 06 was colourful and slightly varied, and Sonic Free Riders looked and ran okay. Look at this murky and muddy mess. It's so bleak and lifeless, and even open air areas look just as stagnant. The levels aren't even fun to look at, let alone play through, so what's the point of going anywhere near this game? Even the music, where I love a bit of hard rock and metal, is so plain and forgettable, it just molds into the Lackluster Art Direction to give you an indiscernible mush of a game that makes every single stage feel like one giant highway across an empty desert. If you want to play a Shadow the Hedgehog game, you're better off finding a real hedgehog and punching its own shadow on the side of the road. Do you feel like you need to wash your brain out after seeing some truly awful video games? Well then how about go to the description below to chrono.gg/caddy, where you can get a really good Steam game on the site every single day for a ridiculously cheap price. Be quick though, the offer only lasts a day and then it will change tomorrow.